Proceed, sir.
Okay, so the first word, Psalm 114, chapter, verse 1. Bet Zadi Aleph Tav. So Bet Aleph is to come into, import, or arrive. That's Bet Aleph or Bet Vav Aleph. This word is Zadi Aleph. So that's export, publish, go out, get out. It's also the word for to defecate, just, or vomit, just. So Zadi is a sprout or a flourish or something which. So Pezadi is the word for explosion, a mouth that opens. It's also detonate, and it's also open mouth. I'm just saying that we're looking at how to analyze the language. So somebody I was talking to was asking about the prefixes and suffixes, and that you might say a first step towards being able to determine how to read these words is to have a sense or a handle of what letters can be prefixes and what letters can be suffixes, because some letters can and some letters can't. So if we wanted to go through the alphabet here and to have this little card available, these are available. Again, Pete and Diana, remember, Diana was going to put up a website or an email for anybody that wants to get these cards and or the chart. But if you have this, Aleph, I'm just going to go through it here for you. Aleph can be a prefix. It basically means I am or I will. Bet can be a prefix. It means in, on, with, among, through, against, or in the condition of. And you'll see this in the dictionary, it'll tell you. Gimel's not a prefix. Dalet can be a prefix in an Aramaic language set. You'll find it in the book of Daniel. The letter He as a prefix means the, T-H-E. The letter Vav as a prefix means and, but, however, sometimes it's when or while. It's a connector. It's a linkage. Zion, Het, Tet, none of those could be prefixes. Yod as a prefix basically means he will, where it's not necessarily always he will, but something like that. Third person referential as to what it's going to be about. Kaf as a prefix means like or as. Lamed as a prefix means unto, regarding, in the condition, similar to the letter bet, concerning, in reference to, could be similar to the letter Vav. Mem is a prefix. You'll see this in the dictionary, means at the place or from, or it could be the opposite, away from, which is to say the opposite. It could be also to put something like the description of a tool, or to make a non-substantive noun, like the word knowledge. So knowledge as a noun has no substance. Putting the mem in front of dalet ayin or dalet ayin tav, which is the word to know, makes it knowledge. Nun as a prefix is like engaging something into the action or the one who's doing the action, very similar to the mem. Samak ayin pei zadi kuf, none of those are prefixes. Or resh. Shin can be a prefix, meaning that which belongs to. Kind of sort of. Tav can be a prefix, and it seems to put something either into the past tense or future tense. The suffixes. Aleph is an Aramaic suffix. You'll see it used in the dictionary. It doesn't seem to change things at all. It's just used as a suffix. He as a suffix is the feminine, basically means to express. Vav as the suffix is a masculine suffix, basically means his or theirs. Yod as a suffix means my or mine. Kaf as a suffix means you or yours. Mem or yod mem as a suffix or is plural, masculine plural. Lamed mem as a suffix means theirs. Kaf mem as a suffix means your, meaning plural, you all. Noon as a suffix is, again, putting something into the action, like vav noon is the one who is doing it. And then the other suffix would just be tav, again, past tense or future tense. So those are the prefixes and suffixes. So if you're looking, like, for example, the end of verse 2 is mem, mem, sheen, lamed, vav, tav, yod, vav. Well, both mems can be a prefix, so can the sheen, so can the lamed, so can the vav, so can the tav, and the yod and the vav. They're all prefixes. The vav, tav, yod, and vav can all be suffixes. It leaves you with sheen lamed in the middle, or maybe mem sheen lamed, but mem can be a prefix, so maybe sheen lamed is the root word. Out of an 8-letter word, you might have a 2-letter essence to the middle of it. I'm just saying, so you can quickly look at these words and figure these are prefixes and these are suffixes, and this is how to find what's at the root. So this first word, bet, zadi, aleph, tav, well, Mark has taken note in his studies about words that have aleph and tav, either both letters written as part of the word, or right there is aleph, tav, right together. Zadi, aleph, tav. Well, if zadi is a sprout or a blossom, and aleph, tav is the iconic concept of aleph, tav, and if bet means in, on, with, among, through, kind of when, or in the condition of sprouting aleph, tav, that's one way to read the word, but it's just translated going out, which is to say the word exodus or export. And then the next word is Israel. So to read the first two words, when exported or when going out, Israel. But if you look at English, it says when Israel went out. So there's a perfect example of a case where they flip it around, because the English syntax is you put the noun first and then the verb. But in Hebrew, they put the verb and then the noun. So you're always going to get a discrepancy in translation. Does it matter? It all depends on how you interpret what's written, which we'll get into this on this first verse. You'll see in a moment. So I could say when sprouting or blossoming aleph, tav, Israel. Well, now I have to define aleph, tav. And then I have to say, why is it sprouting? It must have been dormant. It must have been hibernating. It must have been kept closed, and now it's opening up. So we've talked in the Mishkan pattern how the letter Zadi, correlating to the Mishkan itself, represents the Ark of the Covenant. Correlating to Yeshua, it's the day of resurrection. This day, today, is the Eastern Orthodox or the Greek Orthodox celebration of Easter Sunday morning. Now, other people have other calendars, but just so you know, for Yeshua to pop out of the grave alive as being the culminating event of, well, why was he put to death? So he could resurrect from the dead. Oh, yeah, he also saved us from our sins and took the burden of our punishment and alienation and transformed it as our sacrifice and whatever other doctrines. But why did he have to do it that way? For some reason, he predetermined that he would be a human being in flesh and suffer a tortured death, just so, amongst whatever other reasons, just so he could resurrect after 3 days and 3 nights. That's the Zodi. So if you're Jewish and you don't believe in Yeshua, you're never going to see it. The picture of a caterpillar going into a chrysalis, cocoon, and emerging as a butterfly is a type of showing the metamorphosis. That's the Zodi. To say that it's also the 7th piece of the Mishkan lines it up with the festival of Shemini Atzeret, even though the word Shemini means 8. Shemin is also oil. So Shemini means my oil. So we did a talk about God oil. It was regarding that. But being the seventh also lines up with the concept placement of the Sabbath day, which is the seventh day. If it's the seventh, why does it line up with the eighth? That's a whole nother part of the mystery, you might say. But I'm just saying, so I'm sitting here reading when the Zodi of Aleph Tav blossoms. Something about Yeshua resurrecting out of the grave is the blossoming of Aleph Tav. But so is the exodus of Israel from out of Egypt. The next word, mem mem zadi resh yod mem, ma ma tzarim. Well, mitzar, that's Egypt, Mitzrayim. So the first mem is the prefix, means from or out of the place. But then Egypt, Mitzrayim, is mem zadi resh. Well, Mitzar is a place of zadi resh, which is rock or straits of affliction. In English, we say you're pressed between a rock and a hard place, and you've got this little squeeze. There's a place in Zion National Park called the Narrows. It starts off rather wide. There's a stream going through it, and it gets narrower and narrower. You really got to squeeze your way through. And if you are in that place when a flash flood comes, you're in big trouble. I've seen videos of people taking their cameras with them, and they feel the wind start blowing, and it's like, uh-oh, we better hightail it. We better run out of here, because the wind, when a flash flood is coming, it's pushing the air in front of it. And within moments, within seconds, suddenly there's this huge wall of water coming through. In fact, that just happened. There were some people in Missouri just a couple days ago that were having Pesach in a campground, and within minutes, a flood was waist deep and wrecked their entire camp and their cars and washed away their belongings and motorhomes and all kinds of things. A couple hundred people were there. What I'm saying is this idea, Mitzrayim, literally translated Egypt, means being squeezed, pressured in this conflict of affliction and oppression. And so the idea of blossoming, exporting out, is the opposite. The word memzadi resh literally as a word means boundary, confine, or limit, like being in the grave, like a caterpillar being stuck in the chrysalis, like a chick inside an egg. And once it gets to the point where it cracks open the eggs to be born, suddenly it's out from that bondage. That's Zadi Aleph Tav. And so to see something being birthed is what this is talking about. For us to then take into account that Yahweh said, which we were talking about a few minutes ago, that the message in the constellation, the message in the, you might say, the archetype of Yeshua being the fractal model, the pattern itself on display, is that what happened to Israel can be seen to follow the same pattern. Israel was given, you might say, grace, chen, encampment and provision, and when it betrayed Yahuwah with idolatry and doing wicked, evil, horrible things to each other and everybody else, they actually brought in kind of like this magnetic attraction, but Yahweh sent in their enemies to destroy them, take them into captivity. And as in Leviticus 26, if they didn't return to Yahuwah's words, the terms of the covenant, the stipulations, it would be, the curse would be multiplied by 7. In Ezekiel 4, the curse on the northern kingdom, the house of Israel, house of Ephraim, would be 390 days, representing years. And he said, a day for a year. Ezekiel lay on your side, and because they didn't come back, it multiplied by 7, which brings us to 2010. So the terms of the banishment, the exile, the lost identity would be completed and over as of 2010. This is now 2021, so 11 years ago. So we could say Israel was in a confine, a mitzar, a squeeze between a rock and a hard place for the last 2,700, and it's now been 40 years, which is to say, the blossoming of Aleph Tav, the Zadi Aleph Tav, is the going out into the provision that Yahweh had imagined for us when he designed and built the universe, the planet Earth, created humankind through Adam and Hua, Eve. And now this is the occasion for us to return. To return to what? To return to the original offer, which is the next word, which is the word bet, which is the word house. But it doesn't just mean house. It means, if you look in the dictionary, Klein's dictionary, it means domesticated, to be of the house. Well, if you're domesticated, it means you're not wild, not barbaric. It means you learn the house rules. The interesting thing about both the word aleph and the word bet in the dictionary both mean to be domesticated as per house rules. If you look at the spelling of the word bet, it's bet yod tav. That's a prefix, means in the condition of. Tav is the suffix. Well, then there's just the yod. Well, bet yod as a word means in me or with me or in mine. And then tav is the past tense or the future tense. It's like to be with me in my house is one way to read the word bet. Well, if you have animals that don't have a regard for what it means to be in the house, they're to be left outside. Or if you have people that don't have a regard, that wear muddy shoes all over your carpeting, it's like, take your shoes off. That's not what we do in the house. You don't rough house. You don't throw things and, the stuff your parents teach you when you're a child. You learn what it means to be in the house. And if tav is a sign of the covenant, then what the word bet yod tav, is saying is, in my house, if you're with me, it's according to the terms of the covenant. In other words, there's rules of engagement, rules of relationship between Yahweh and Israel. And so, going back to the beginning, when the Aleph Tav was at its blossom, like springtime, the month of Aviv, like right now, Israel exported, published, left from the straits of affliction, the boundary and confine of Egypt, to the condition of being domesticated in covenant with Yahweh. Now there's the word Yaakov, just simply translated Jacob, but there's a yod, ayin kuf bet. Yod was turned into the English letters I and J. So in this case, it's J as in Jacob. Yod ayin kuf bet should actually be like YOQB, if you want to put the English letters to it. But it literally, yod means a prefix that means he will. So the word Jacob is actually a statement of a prophetic event if it starts off with a letter that means he will. And what ayin kuf bet means, if you read in the dictionary, is following. It's the wake of a ship. It's to trace the path like a detective, or like if you're hunting and you're trying to follow what you're looking for. It also means to rise up to the third dimension, which is where we get the word in mathematics to the third power, or cubed, which is why the Kaaba, QAB or QAABA, the Kaaba stone in, I think it's Mecca or Medina, is a big black cube, because it's the same word for Yaakov, cubed, QB, the last two letters, Kuf Bet, means to be in the third dimension. So in geometry, you've got the x-axis and y-axis on a flat plane, and then you've got the z-axis vertical. So it means to ascend into the third dimension, and it also means then to overreach or supersede or to get airborne. Abraham, Aleph Bet Resh, means pinions by which a bird flies, the strong flight feathers. Yaakov is hilarious laughter, but it also has to do with celestial, powdery like the sky, the ethereal. So you might think like laughter in the sky, that's almost like fireworks. So the Elohim of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov can be read as saying, he will give us wings by which to lift up and fly hilariously. And you could say, well, that's almost like Superman. And remember, Superman, the comic book and the TV show back in the 60s, he could leap over obstacles, fly over buildings. And that's almost like an iteration or a cartoon version of the promise given to the descendants, you might say, of belief, if not just even genetic lineage, of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, that we will be able to rise up into the third dimension and leap over obstacles hilariously. Well, that's quite a promise. Is that just metaphorical, or is that a reality? Nobody knows. Maybe it's in front of us. I mean, after all, the butterfly can do that. It came out of the chrysalis and can fly, and drinks nectar from the blossoms rather than eating the leaves of the plants before it went into the chrysalis. So is that a picture of the Zadi? Is that the Zadi Aleph Tav? Is he's given us this promise that if we would just walk in his ways and believe his words and guard his commands, that things are possible to us that we don't even know, because we would be a different type of people. Well, guess what? The next word is the word mem, ayin mem. Ayin mem is the word for people, kinsman. It's also the word that means with. And the letter mem as a prefix means in the state of, or in the condition as being this people, but it also means away from. So when they say, then you look at the last word of the verse, lamed ayin zayin. If you look up in the dictionary, lamed ayin zayin means to speak a foreign language, to slander, or to speak ill of. So that's translated away from, that's the prefix letter mem, ayin mem, people of a foreign language. Okay, but wait a minute, there's another way to read this. Because when Yaakov blossomed away from or out of the boundary and confine limits of Egypt, the Straits of Affliction, like its chrysalis, where it was developing, and became the people of the house of Yahuwah, raised up like this butterfly climbing out, they became a people of, and now the letter lamed means unto or towards the condition, it categorized as ayin zayin. As a destination, they became a people of, and then ayin zayin means goat or fortress or splendor, might, awesome, and daring. So this could be read as a promise. Israel, when they left Egypt, Yahweh says, I'm taking you out to be my people. No longer are you in the confine. You are now a different type of person, a different category. You're not a standard human being. You're not a nation like any other nation. You're completely special unto me. You're my Kadoshi, and that Kuf Dalet Shin Yod is used in other places. Kadoshin Elyonin is used in Daniel 9. But he said, don't even think of yourself as a typical human like any other nation, because you're going to be treated different. You've got different promises. You've got different curses. The other kids on the block can do misbehavior, do things that their parents don't care about, but I care. Like hear my dad speaking, and if you do certain things, Yahweh is saying to Israel, you're going to answer to me, and you've got big trouble. if you betray me, but you've got incredible blessings beyond the scope of what anybody else can imagine if you walk in my ways, if you're my people. So that letter mem before the word I and mem can mean both in the place of or totally away from. So now we have this setup saying, well, they left people speaking a foreign language. Well, yeah, so what does that mean? That means the people of Egypt, they were in the confined limits of a whole different consciousness, a whole different cultural, ideological, philosophical understanding of what the universe is and how it works. In the benefit of turning back to Hebrew being the language of the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of Yahuwah, is that it sets up the national holidays, the Moedim, as we said earlier in the last hour, as if it was a dance, as if it was a dance step, as if this was dancing through the year with certain steps. So back in the Archaeology class of 2011, we talked about this. There was, I don't even know if they're still around, a guy named Arthur Murray had a dance studio or different places that people would go, and they had shoe prints stepped out on the floor. And it's like, here, put your feet there, step here and do it according to a certain rhythm, a certain music, and, you know, cha-cha-cha, whatever it might be. You learn the dance steps. The Moedim are the dance steps of the culture of the kingdom of heaven. They're not just detestable Jewish practices, as Constantine thought. And when Constantine eradicated, annihilated, desolated, did away with the Moedim, including the Yom HaShabbat, the day of the Sabbath, that's listed in Leviticus 23, he purged the Roman Empire from any vestige of the culture of the kingdom of Yahweh and replaced it with Roman culture. Alexander the Great did it with Greek culture when he imposed the Greek language and did away with the languages of the indigenous peoples of the lands that he conquered. So to restore Hebrew and restore the Moedim, which according to the Mishkan pattern are both the same, brings back the kingdom of heaven and gives us a consciousness which is not like the people that are in the straits of affliction. Mitzrayim, the boundary, confine, and limit of their imagination, of their thinking, of their politics, economic status, cultural boundaries. For us to return to this language of Hebrew is a Zadi blossoming of the Aleph Tav. That brings the fact that we are reading verse 1 now in this way as this event actually taking place, which hasn't took place. Well, if David wrote this, that was 1000 BC. The Septuagint Greek translation was brought about by Ptolemy II in approximately 285 BC, 2,300 years. And remember, we talked about the fact that the name Yud-He-Vav-He was taken out with the Septuagint. Those 4 letters were taken out. And when King James put the Bible into English, he did not put the 4 letters of Yud-He-Vav-He back in. And as we were saying in the first hour, dragging Yahuwah's name into the matter changes everything. It's kind of like when Paul said, hey, I'm a Roman citizen. You can't do this to me. I appeal to Caesar. It's like, okay, you just amped it up. You can't back up. As soon as you appeal to Caesar, that becomes the court of jurisdiction, and the lesser courts, it's out of their hands. As soon as you drag Yahuwah's name into a matter, you better make sure you're right. You better make sure you're doing Zadika, because when Mishpat comes, it's coming across the board. Talking to Wesley last night about that. This concept that says Mishpat is the foundation of Yahuwah's throne if any of us claim his name, it's like playing poker and you say, I call, let's see what you got in your hand. To call mishpat is to say, okay, everybody, let's equal the playing board. Everybody show what you're holding. Any evil will be brought to bear upon the righteous also, but you better make sure you not got any corruption going on, because if you call for mishpat and Yahweh's going to clean his house first, we better make sure we're doing the right thing. Verse 2, it will be, that's hayatah. So as we've said before, any word that has a combination of the letters hey, yod, and vav, or in any order, it means to exist. And then aleph and tav don't necessarily change anything. So here you've got a tav stuck in, so it's hayatah. But remember the word yahi, as in yahi, or just simply means to exist. Or haya, or hua, hey, vav, hey, existing. So here, it will exist. What will exist? When will it exist? When? Do we go back to the first word? I'm trying to show you that as you're reading these words, it's building. So if it starts off saying bet Zadi Aleph Tav, when this blossoming of Aleph Tav for Israel happens and they break out of their eggshell, they bust out of the cocoon, and they're given this rising up to the third dimension like a butterfly to be a people of splendor, might, awesome, daring, a people whose bet is a fortress of Yahuwah. At that time, is it now telling us what's happening coincidentally, or is it now going to tell us what's the precipitous event? Like what has to happen to make it that time? Yehuda. Well, what's Yehuda? Yod, Hey, Vav, all three are prefixes. Dalet, well, that's not a prefix. Well, it might be an Aramaic prefix. Hey, that's the suffix. Well, Dalet is a door, which means to choose. Yod is the prefix, means he will. Hey, Vav, Dalet, well, that's the word Hod, as in Hodu. Hodu la yuah ki tov, ki leolam chazdo. Give thanks to Yahweh. Give thanks, give praise. It's reverberating, it's resonating, it's confession of sin. Daniel 9, if we can get to that, that's what Daniel was doing, and everything changed at the moment Daniel was doing this. It will be when or as he expresses, hey suffix, hod. Who? It's talking about Israel. Now, does it talk about Israel meaning all 12 tribes? Is it talking about Israel meaning the northern 10 tribes, which are completely lost? Or is it talking about some metaphorical? Is it talking about, does it include Judah? The word Judah is here, but instead of reading the word Judah, we can read it as he expresses thanks and praise and confession of where he's failed. La kadosho. Unto, see if the letter lamed means unto his kadosh. Well, now that the word kadosh is a status of his standing. His being the suffix, or it could mean they, but lamed as a prefix can mean this is what brings him transitioning from one thing to another. What one thing to another? Going back to the first verse. From being locked in affliction to being exported, emerging out of the egg, out of the chrysalis, unto the third dimension of the people of splendor, being of the house and fortress of Yahuwah. So this word kadosh then means it's a status of a reality that they had been hoping for, expecting, because it was promised, and now this is the realization of the confirmation of it. It will be when or as he is hoding, giving praise and thanks as a kadosh one. Quit being stupid, quit sinning, quit doing idolatry, quit amalgamating your consciousness with the pagans, the heathens, the infidels, the betrayers, the ones that have no interest, and nothing to do with the kingdom of Yahuwah. Surround yourself with kadosh things, Israel, the next word, so that, that's mem, so that. Mem is this place, this womb, this pool of water, but it also means to be away from one thing to bring you into the place of another. And it's a double mem. Mem, mem, shin, lamed, vav, tav, yod, vav. That word I meant. Well, the word mishal, or Michelle, or Marshall, like Marshall Dillon, literally it means marshal, like I'm intentionally leaving the R out because the word marshal is the sheriff who has dominion. That's what this word means, to have dominion, but it also is the word mashal or mishli as translated Proverbs. So the word mishal or mashal means an allegory, a parable, or a proverb. So in the place of, or as placement, or used as a proverbial allegorical mishli, the dominion, now I'm going to read the sentence backwards, Israel's dominion as being kadosh or not is dependent on whether he confesses the truth of his errors, his sins, and gives praise and thanks as the example, as the allegorical, proverbial example to the world of what we're supposed to be doing concerning Yahuwah's dominion over us. Well, that's the whole Aleph-Bet pattern. That's the message in the Aleph-Bet. So here, this is telling us that when Israel starts doing, well, it looks exactly like what we're doing right now. When Israel starts admitting where they were wrong and starts giving Hod, reverberating and resonating across the face of the earth, echoing ripples across the earth, regarding Yahweh's kadoshness and regarding that Israel is behaving as kadosh people, set apart, sacred, kadosh, like Yahweh imagined, like Yahweh said, like doing Yahweh's instructions, keeping his day and his moedim and his name and his language. That's Israel's job. Straightly, rightly. Well, that's the word Israel. Yod Shin Resh, Aleph Lamed. Yod Shin Resh is a derivative with Aleph Shin Resh that means right, straight, level, smooth, accurate. Fill up the low spots, carve down the high spots. It's how you pave a road. Straight, level, smooth, plumb, level, square. Israel. Resh Aleph, this has a lamed suffix, but if lamed isn't a suffix, so Aleph lamed is a root word, which is El, which is where we get the word power and strength, Elohim, and also Aleph lamed Hey means these. Aleph lamed means to point in the direction towards. It can mean no, so Aleph lamed is this authority, but Resh Aleph Hey means to see, put on exhibition, make perceptible. So Israel, this is how you read this, he will, Yod prefix, Shin Resh is the word sar, as in prince, poet, bracelet chain, singer, trim trees, give a shape to something. So we mentioned about how you go on a vacation and you stop different places, you get like little charms on a bracelet, charm bracelet, and you go, oh, I remember I went here and here and here, souvenirs. A singer takes a song like the folk singers of the 60s took difficult matters like social injustice and the Vietnam War and stuff in America, and they turned them into little ditty songs people could sing together around the campfire, and it's taking heavy, complex matters and making them light and beautiful and tangible and approachable, like what we're doing with the Aleph-Bet. That's what Israel's job is, to make El approachable, to help people come to Elohim in truth and to understand his beauty, his favor, his grace, his wisdom. And it will be when Israel starts behaving properly that the proverbial world history, because of Israel, you betray Yahweh, you get smacked to where you're dragged into captivity, lose your identity, go insane. But guess what? You return to the words of Yahweh. He restores his favor. He restores his language, Shapha, which means to cure from lunacy, to restore your sanity. And he restores his favor and his blessings, and your prestige as in dominion, just like the picture that happened to Nebuchadnezzar. He was the king of kings that Yahweh favored and said, he's even the sword in my hand. But then when he thought too much of himself, he went insane. His hair grew like fur, his fingernails like bird's claws, and he was absolutely crazy. What was it, 7 years, I think? And then when he gave hod, when he confessed his sin and he acknowledged Yahuwah, proclaimed with his mouth, his sanity came back and he is restored to the throne. Nebuchadnezzar was used as an allegory, just like Israel. And so the picture of Yeshua coming back to life out of the grave, like the butterfly, is the Bet Zadi Aleph Tav of the first word, saying it's an allegory of Israel's promise. So for us to be doing this is to play into that reality as a mental paradigm. Our entire construct of our mind is fit according to this skeletal pattern. That's the letter Samic that we talked about last week. That's the secret. Hey, Samic. Calling my name. That was the song you put on, Kurt. I think I hear Yahweh calling my name. Calling for Ephraim. And there's that verse. We can find where it is, but Yahweh's going to call for Ephraim. Like I said, my dad used to go out and my dad's calling. We got to get home. When Yahweh has put out this call, it's the Sabbath day. We better get home. It's the Moed. We better get home. It's Shavuot. We better start counting to 50. We got to get back domesticated of his house in the splendor of his fortress, his culture. That's our destination. That's verse 1. That's verse 2. Verse 3. The water, the sea, seas. Hayim Resh Aleph Hey. Well, the Aleph is kind of a silent letter, so it's just Resh Aleph Hey is Re. It's kind of a hard English thing. Re. Hayim Re. Va'inas Hayiradan Isav La Achor. The sea sees. So something about the ocean perceives or has on exhibition, or maybe the ocean is part of the metaphor that it was just talking about. Somehow the sea is going to behave as a metaphor, and then the word vav and connected with yod, nun, samic. Well, yod's a prefix, nun's a prefix, now you have the letter samic. But if you look at the word nun samic, like the Erichtology logo, the red nun, the purple samic surrounded by the letters, as a logo, literally the word nun samic means a flag, a banner, a symbol, a sign, but it also means a way of escape and a miracle. Well, when the Yom Suf opened up, that was the miraculous way of escape for Israel. But it's a symbol. It's a symbol of what? That means we have to look at it and look at the letters and look at this, because the letters are symbols. The next word, Hey Yod Resh Dalet Nun, that's translated the Jordan River. But Yerad is where you get the word Lord, L-O-R-D, which means to dominate. Well, that's the word Mishle is to dominate. Resh Vav Dalet Rud, like Michael Rood, it means a ruler, but it also means to wander restlessly. But you'll see it also mean in the dictionary, it means to remove honey from the hive or remove bread from the oven. What does that got to do with being a ruler? Well, if you dominate the bees and the bees have to go out and labor, work like crazy, flying all around to the flowers and bringing back the pollen and turning it into honey, and you're the big shot that just gets to walk up, open it up, and steal the honey. That's because you're dominating the bees. Same thing. Who has the authority to open up the oven and pull the bread out of the oven, or the pie off the windowsill? The one with authority, the one who dominates. Why does the tax man get to reach into your pockets and pull out a third or half of whatever you earned? Domination. That's the word resh dalet, Yarad. But Yarad or Radan also means to be pushed down. So the Jordan is the river that flows downhill from the Sea of Galilee all the way down to the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is the lowest place on the face of the earth. The next word, Yod, Samik, Bet. Well, Samik and Sheen quite often play off each other, just like Ayin and Aleph play off each other. Meaning, a word that's spelled with a Samik Bet is sometimes the exact same meaning as the word spelled with Sheen Bet, which happens to mean old man, or to return, or repent, or come back. It also is the case here that Samik Bet means fine bran, or something that's been finely milled, extra processing to make it really high quality. So if Yod Samik Bet means it'll come back. Oh, okay, that's talking about the Jordan River flowing backwards. No, wait a minute. The dominion of the Jordan, the one who has the right to dominate. Well, that was the covenant given to Israel if he did what he was supposed to, but he was thrown into captivity, the northern kingdom of the 10 tribes, for almost 3,000 years. And if he learns his lesson and comes back refined, well, that's Yod Samik Bet. So now it's not talking about the Jordan River, it's talking about Israel having been thrown into captivity. The sea on exhibition is just a symbol that even though it looks like we're locked in and doomed, Yahweh will miraculously provide a way of escape that we can't even imagine from our perspective of right now. Do you think the chick inside the egg, all it knows is that it used to be a yolk and now it's got a bird with feathers and it's crammed? If you've ever peeled open an egg and seen the chick or watched the chick hatch, it's like, as soon as it's out, it's twice the size, and how did it ever fit in there? It's just astounding. That's like this. So this word Yod Samik Bet, old man, fine bran, come back when he's old, refined. You think Israel's learned his lesson yet? Better that we have. What we're doing right now needs to be the proof as being the remnant of Israel after all these years. Yes, we learned our lesson. We were made to stand in the corner when we were kids. Our parents, if we were misbehaving, they'd stick us in the corner for half an hour, whatever, 30 minutes, 2 hours. If you did your time and you still had an attitude, you got to stand in the corner with more time. If you changed yet, if you change your attitude, you change your ways, doesn't matter who was right and who was wrong. If you were punished standing in the corner, have you learned your lesson yet? That's what this word is talking about. Then the last word, la'achor, lamed. Lamed is the prefix. Aleph, chet, vav, resh. Well, remember, yods and vavs are like wild cards, so you end up with aleph, chet, resh. Achar, well, that's like el achrim, gods of others or other gods. So this word achor literally means other. It means, if you look it up in the dictionary, it has to do with het resh or het vav resh, white, like Mark's hair, white hair. It's a nobleman, where we get the word hoary-headed, like hoar frost. But not only white, but it also means evident and clear. It also means white or whiter, and it means pale. So the song "A Whiter Shade of Pale" comes to mind. What does that even mean, a whiter shade of pale? That's what this verse is talking about. Have you changed your ways from being the old Israel, who was a big stupid jerk, who did wicked idolatry and killed and stole and did all these stupid things, The word achor then means future, next, delayed, strange, other, future. It's also a retrospective, like the old man, the remnant of Israel, who comes back refined, having changed his name, retrospectively, hoding, admitting. And you'll see that the word achar also means backside, Western, like Greco-Roman, backward, mournfully, and ass. Admitting he's been an ass, he's changed his ways, evident and clear. Why? Because he's doing what Yahweh said. Sitting down on Shabbat, keeping the Moedim. A very interesting comparison. You look at the word het, vav, resh, pay. Well, now pay is not a suffix, so that's just pulling another letter and sticking it in. But knowing what the letters are, pay is a mouth, or that which opens. Het, vav, resh, evident and clear. But resh, pay, Raph, as in Yahweh Rapha, Raphenu, Yahweh our healer, will pay as a mouth. So to heal the mouth, retrospectively, going back to the ancient mouth, well, the word het, vav, resh, pay literally means hibernating. Well, the ancient Hebrew language has been hibernating as Israel's been locked up in its prison cell for nearly 3,000 years. I'm just trying to show you how this all fits together like this incredible puzzle. And when we hode, we admit that we've been ass backward. Bass-ackward is the word, I guess, that Western Greco-Roman culture instead of the kingdom of Yahweh culture. These are all literal meanings of the word achor. And we need to be of a wider shade of pale, because the word pale can mean sad and despondent. The word Yarden means he will descend or be removed or be brought down from his dominion. He was up here and he was brought down. And when Israel returns to the ways of Yahuwah, the promise is the resurrection of because of Zadi Aleph Tav, because of the meaning of the Zadi according to the Aleph Tav. We know with confidence that the promise that Yahuwah gave to the collective 12 tribes of Israel is that they get to go back up. Even the word Galilee, Galel, like we mentioned, Gimel Lamed means to go into exile uncovered, but also to discover, and the revolving door be returned back to the original position. That's the promise of the covenant, which was forgotten. But when we learn our lesson, come back refined, changed our ways as a status of a nobleman of dignity, being of the house of the splendorous fortress of Yahweh. I'm now combining all three verses together. The language is returned. The pay of the whore, which has been in hibernation, is restored to being evident. And remember, last week we had talked about that verse that says that the knowledge of Elohim will cover the earth. That's verse 14 of Habakkuk, chapter 2. For so thus the fullness of the earth, Lamed Dalet Ayin Tav, regarding knowledge or in the consideration of the knowledge of the kavod of Yahweh, like water covers over the sea. But this word covers is the word throne, Yod Kaf Samik Vav, and it means he hid himself. So he said, how does water cover the sea? Water is the sea. Well, something about the kavod of Yahuwah is what's all around us. To be able to look out and appreciate the flowers and the trees and the birds and the fish and the colors and the scents of spring, and to realize, I don't see the kavod of Yahweh. Where is it? This is it, for us to have an appreciation of reality. But the whole world has to come to that point. How's it going to come to that point? It's in the restoration of his language, keyed to every letter of every word being his kavod. So, as we said before, in every letter, you can see every other letter, and in every letter, it's a hologram. The entire picture is in each individual letter. So this sprouting, it's a fractal thing, the sprouting of the entire alphabet is housed in just the Zadi, just the bet, just the aleph, just the ta. In each letter is a picture of the whole thing. So the same way that coming out of the chrysalis, coming out of Egypt, as Yahweh's personal possession of his house, of his splendorous fortress, La'az, out of the speaking of the foreign language. That's what's in front of us. That's what this is. And we're in the midst of that reality, present tense. Verse 4, hey, hey, resh yod mem. Hey, hey, the. But hey, resh is mountain. Yod mem would be plural, so it's simply translated the mountains. But reem, resh yod mem, are big, great things like Rome, like Romulan. Resh vav mem, resh yod mem, the reem ox. It's kind of like big shots. Hey, hey, big shots. Resh kuf dalet. They rocked. Resh kuf dalet literally means jump, leap, dance, skip about. Of course, we have rock and roll, but the big shots skipped about dancing. Oh, the mountains jumped around. I'm just showing you how you can read this with different imagery. Like, that's a prefix letter kaf, and then the word is aleph yod lamed, ayil, and then the suffix yod mem would be plural. Ka'ayilim. Well, ayil, we mentioned this before, was rams, stags, oaks, cedars, big and majestic. Well, like the reem. So it's a synonym, ayil and reem. Well, oaks and cedars don't dance. Rams and stags, do they dance? So is this really saying that the mountains are dancing like rams or stags? In fact, usually if you ever see a picture of a ram or a stag as somebody's symbolic logo, they're just kind of standing there, stoic. So is this saying that even big shot stoics are going to be so exhilarated that they're going to be woohoo, jumping all around? Maybe. Somebody jumping on the paper here. The next word, Gimel bet ayin vav tav, is the plural. Gimel bet ayin means to be high or to project. Oh, that must be a hill. Hills. To be high and to project, which is to launch or it's to fulfill potential, to accomplish and excel. The next word, kabene zan. So kaf bet nun yod, be like children, zadi aleph nun. Well, that's the word for small cattle, kids, lambs, or calves, or the ones going out to zadi aleph. That's the export public. Like, you children go out to play. Go get dirty. Go have fun in the mud. Zadi aleph is be productive or reproductive. Go out and fulfill your potential. This isn't just to stand there looking stoic as a symbol. Go out and make stuff happen. Yahweh gave Israel dominion and put them in a position of saying, whatever you do will flourish. Go do it, but you better do it in righteousness or it will fail and you'll end up in jail. That's what this is talking about. The next one, verse 5, Malakah ha'im ki tav nun vav samek ta nos hayiradan tav samek bet tasav la achor. He's now reiterating, what got into you? What's up? Why? Hang on, wait a minute. What is going on? That the sea should open up, that the Jordan should back up, that the mountains and the hills should frolic like shaking out a rug, like a carpeting. And then the answer is in verse 7 and 8. But Kirk wants to stop here, and we're going to Catch that on the next video, right? Kurt?
Yes, give me 2 minutes. Give me 2 minutes. Unless people want to say something.
Sure. Anybody want to say anything before we jump into the last two verses, which kind of resolves the whole thing? Anybody? Got to turn your mic on.